Probably be a couple of people kind of arriving in drips and drabs, but I want to honor you guys that have been here, that are here. And as we explore today the exciting world of a strategy call, sometimes called the strategy call, sometimes called the discovery call, sometimes called the sales call, but basically talking to people in such a way that they end up giving you money. Hey, amazing. There's Aileen as well. What I'd love to do, given this is this is a marketing, a sales and marketing event, is I want to give you guys the opportunity to network with yourselves as well, and also just for me to get an idea of what are the specific things that I have some content I want to share with you guys, but I'd love to know just in a couple sentences who you are, what you do, and what is the one thing that caused you to show up today, in terms of this like strategy call anatomy thing. What was what was it that you were hoping to get from today? So Jacqueline, I'll start with you. You want to just share with us what you do and what you're hoping to get from today?
Yeah, my name is Jacqueline Meyers, and I am a copywriter, and I build quiz funnels, lead generation quiz funnels. I came because I've got a script for my calls, and it uses a lot of what John teaches, but you never know what tidbits you're going to pick up that might just make it even better, because I do have a really nice rate, conversion rate, but I'm looking to make it better always. So that's why I'm here.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, it's great. You've got a conversion rate already. So I think, we'll save all the difficult questions for you, Jacqueline. Amazing. Massimo.
Hey, John. How you doing? Hello, guys. Well, I'm a psychologist and sexologist. Always kind of been in the clinical setting. So, built my business very traditionally in terms of word of mouth and things like that, and kind of really stepping more into creating my programs and putting them out there. So marketing side has never really done anything more than really word of mouth and meeting up with people and having really live events. So, everything that I've been learning from John and these groups is spectacular, because, the last, I would say, a month has just been, I don't want to use the word too loosely, but mind fuckery, and pushing me to actually do everything that I need to do. So it's I guess really what I'm learning from this is how to market myself better, how to really sell that product that I've created. That's where I am.
Amazing. Great stuff. Well, I think, in terms of you're now the new candidate for the difficult questions, because, Jacqueline can solve the sales questions. But, if you have any questions about your sex life, Massimo's your back. So,
anything.
You're going to learn all sorts of things here today, folks.
Okay. Send them a link to the buy it now bit, or is it we control an invoice? And I don't know if we know that. If somebody.
There you go. Right, tough act to follow, but I'm going to say, Blair, take us away.
Hi everyone, I'm Blair Young. I work for a company called AM Bid, and we're bidding and tender writing experts. Basically, what I'm aiming to get out today is that I'm on the business development team, so I host a few of these strategy calls and these sort of things for the business. So just basically a few more sort of hints and tips to sort of help hot leads become actual sales. So that's what I'm looking for.
Amazing. Good stuff. Let's go, Pete.
Hi, I'm Pete Moores, and I guess I'm a one-man accelerator program to help science and technology companies get to their next funding destination, or ideally to eventually end up building unicorns. And because I work with early stage companies, my principal issue is that although I think I'm getting to something that is, they understand the value of what I can bring to them, it's not enough to persuade them to try and find the money, which in the early stage of a company is quite difficult. So that's the key barrier I'd like to get better at overcoming.
Fantastic. And I think that's, that's the I mean, business is all about serving people and about all of that stuff. But the way, when people give you money is how you keep score, right? That's to me the principal diagnostic about whether or not what you're doing is working. Is people giving you money for that? And hopefully, you're delivering, if you're delivering a lot more value than they're giving you money for, I think it's our duty to make lots of money. Because that just allows you to keep paying it forward. But I think, part of my reason for doing this today is that it's a challenge. I surely struggled, I've been doing digital marketing stuff for the last 20 years. Never made more than about £5,000 a month on a good month, until I learned some of the things I'm going to show you guys today. I was like, blinding flash of the obvious. It's not about making more money doing digital marketing stuff. It doesn't come from getting better at doing the digital marketing stuff. It comes better at getting people to give you money for the digital marketing stuff, right? And that was the thing. And I think it's not about me. Like, it's actually not about me and about my product, but it's about the who you're sitting in front of and their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. Aileen.
Hello, fellow Scott. Hello, Blair. I actually know Andrew, so I know the company Embed really well. So I know Andrew, the founder. So I describe myself as chief protagonist. I'm an adaptive growth strategy and scale up ninja. I would say I work very much in similar circles to you, Pete. I work with in the tech space, education, life sciences, etc., and work on getting those early stage organizations to that next stage. I talk about things like tech for good, entrepreneurship, strategic thinking, and I have a particular interest in the conscious business space as we move to a little bit away from hardcore capitalism and towards being completely commercially minded, but not necessarily elbows out and stepping over the grannies to get to it. So that's my particular specialty, and I really like the circular economy area. The reason I came here is, again, similar to what you have all said. It's in the closing, really, isn't it? And it's that how it's getting different ways to ask for the business without going, so how about it then? So yeah, that's me. Nice to meet you all.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to show of hands before I get into the Nancy, I appreciate you on a call. Feel free to introduce yourself whenever you're free. But I want to just show of hands, who of you guys has a defined product? Like an accelerator system or a 90-day process or a... Okay. I mean, there's no right or wrong answer here. The reason I ask that is because when I was thinking about this process, the sales process, and especially like one-person entrepreneurs is kind of like, my niche, right? The people, I mean, I've worked with a lot of different people, but like one-person entrepreneurs is my thing. And there's a stage that you go through, and it's typically, we're on one life trajectory where we've got a job at a corporate or something like that, and you're doing something, you're not necessarily, on one path, and then something happens and you go, I want to do something else with my life, right? And you eject from the corporate thing, you embark on your new process, your new impulse, and your new thing, and now you want to start talking to people for money about these things. And initially, the evolution of this process, I'm just going to share screens with you guys quick. Let's get that. Is kind of from one-to-one service-based, highly bespoke services. Just go over here. All right, just chat when you guys can see the screen. All right, okay, can you guys see that? Okay, amazing. Right, so this is the sort of the evolution where we start off and go, right, I'm off on my own, I start my business. And what we're selling is one-to-one low volume, high price services, essentially. And at this stage, it's largely solution led. And what that means is that you're talking to people with problems and money, finding out where they are, where they want to be, and then making up a unique thing for them, working with them one-to-one to do something very specific for them, right? This is the early stages. Once you start to see patterns within that, you might start to create a group program where you start to see the common factors within that, right? And once you start to see groups within that, you might start to create like a hybrid or digitally assisted processes, and ultimately then create the online process. So you guys from AMBID have just launched Tender Coach, right? Which is your digital program.
Ultimate Tender Coach.
Ultimate Tender Coach, you know, which means something quite different with someone like Massimo in the room, because, you know, it's a double meaning there. Are you tender or are you tender? You know, like maybe you just, you know, you need to be more heartfelt in your sales process and be more tender in your bids. But maybe I appreciate you guys are all about winning more bids. But you can see the evolution there. So Andrew started off and he was like, I see a problem, and he started working off one-to-one with people. And then started to see patterns within that, and ultimately created a digital process. Now, the sales process actually looks different depending on where you are in the journey. It's the same moves, but the emphasis will be slightly different in terms of the close. So that's why I wanted to just give you guys the context to say the moves are sort of the same, but the emphasis might change a little bit. All right. The other kind of dynamic to be aware of in terms of a, you know, the sales process call is almost the temperature of the person coming into the call with you. Okay, so so your sales process or your sales call, there's a couple of different flavors to it. So if you imagine if someone has booked a call with you, like they're booking a product demo or something like that, right? They already know you have a product, and they're booking the thing for the sole purpose of finding out whether or not they want to buy. So that's a much more traditional sales call. They're coming in, they're almost leaning forward, and the whole context of the call is about, you know, I'm selling, you're buying, and we're looking for that fit. Slightly different thing, you might have what's called a I call it a discovery call, where you've just met someone cool on LinkedIn and you're having a chat with them. It's almost a mutual thing where I want to find out a bit about you and you're going to find out a bit about me, and then we'll see if it makes sense for us to move forward, right? Things, so networking calls or something like that. But to me, everything is a sales call. You guys are on a sales call right now with me, like I'm selling you stuff, right? But it's a group process, and it's going to be very much, because of the number of people in the room, it's going to be very much about me delivering a lot of content, rather than you guys having individual, you know, so you still saw, I still set the context, and I allowed each of you guys, because I want to understand the context into which I can position my content. Right? So even in a group environment, it's always about, it's the same process, the same moves every time, where it's not about me, it's not about my content, but it's about how can I position what I offer in a way to help you get what you want. Make sense? Right, so let's talk about through let's go through the stages of the anatomy of a closing call. Can you guys see this okay? Is it big enough? Yeah, okay. Let's go a slideshow. I'm sure we can make it bigger. Even bigger still. Is that okay? Fantastic. All right, we're all good. So these are the basic stages. Prepare, open, chit chat, set the frame. What's a frame, John? I'll tell you. Find the gap, reflect, prescribe, decision, and the next steps. Sometimes that will be cash immediately, but sometimes that's going to be the next step, depending on the temperature of the client going in and the nature of the sales call. Okay. And then, you know, next steps on follow-up. Okay. So being a visual dude, this is kind of how I visualize the stages of the process. So if you look at the temperature of the client and the client engagement, to what extent is the client lighting up like a Christmas tree? Over time, what they should do is peak at the time that you're about to tell them how to make their dreams come true. And you'll notice, so this is a traditional, a kind of sales call model where we're preparing, but most of the time is actually about listening. Okay, so prescribing, it's like that point over there where I would be telling you about my solution. Okay. So even this is in a sales call, it's a lot about asking questions. And the last 10 to 15, so this is a 60-minute call, maybe 10 to 15 minutes of content about this is what I do. Okay. The rest is about how you queue up those 10 to 15 minutes. All right. Okay. So if I had to look at, I'm just going to flash in and out of here. So I've got, I am a marketer and I am going to sell you some stuff at some point, if you're the right fit. But in the back of my mind, if you have a product, right? So in part of the program I have is the Conscious Business Accelerators to help one-person businesses reach 100K in revenue. So you can see, here's my program. There's 9 different squares over here separated into 3 different things. I haven't told you about any of that yet. Okay, the sales process is one part of it, right? It's that part of the whole system is the sales process. It's one small specific piece of it. But when we're looking at, so there's 9 different pieces. If I was on a sales call one-to-one, what I would be looking for during this first stage is finding out which parts out of the 9 modules are the most relevant, right? So instead of going, here's all the things and giving you a vomit list of all the different things that are the ingredients, what we're looking for is, how do we find out what are the most potent parts of that to prescribe in order for the person to get what they want? Okay, and that's where the money is. It's not about the program. Your program or your process or your services are only valuable in as much as it helps your prospect get what they want. Okay. All right. So let's go into a little bit of the detail. So phase 1, or let's call it phase. Phase 1 is prepare. Now, phase 1, prepare. The data part of this is, if you are going to, especially if you're selling high ticket stuff, we're talking about things in the multiple thousands of pounds, and I think most of you guys are something in that range. You don't need this heavy duty stuff if what you're doing is selling peppermints or something like that, right? That's why you can just pick them off the shelf in a supermarket. You don't need this sort of heavy duty stuff, but to the extent that we're selling things that cost a little bit more money, we're wanting to position the transformation in such a way that the transformation is going to be way more valuable than whatever it is that you're charging. Okay, so phase 1 is prepare before the call. Definitely research the person. So that's just the data point of view. We've got so much resources available: LinkedIn, the website, reviews, but more than that, there's a few guys of you who signaled that you're kind of in the conscious space. The other thing to prepare yourself before that is your own mindset and prepare your own energy. Okay, so if you're into meditation and visualization, you can actually center your energy in the point where you spend 5 to 10 minutes visualizing the other person's success, right? And them getting what they want, and sort of bring that space, bring that energy into the call. Because to my mind, sales is never about convincing anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. It's about enabling to get what they want. Okay, it's about being of service to help people get what they want. It's about, what do you want, right? So this is the zone we want to get into before the call. Research them, understand where they are, where do they want to be, what's in the way, have some idea about that, and connect with yourself. And whatever it takes to get yourself in the zone. I've heard people who put high heels on, I personally find high heels uncomfortable. But you know, get dressed for success, cup of coffee, whatever it is, to get yourself in the zone so that you've got the energy to be able to connect and empathize and be able to be in a receptive space. Yeah. The next section there is just, you know, open the call. Right? Check your microphone, make sure all of those things work. Open, hey, welcome. It's going to be slightly different depending on what type of call it is, but really that's just about making sure that everyone all the right people are in the room, right? Everyone can hear you. All of that stuff is down, and then generally there's a little bit of chit chat, right? Where, hey, where are you from? Where did you come from? You know, how did you get here? What did you have for breakfast? And the point of that is to start building rapport. Okay, so why we start to do this is to start building that human connection, because you're going to position your product into the gap. The gap is the distance between, for your prospect, from where they are to where they want to be. And in order for them to volunteer that information, the bigger the gap is that you can create, the bigger the transformation you can facilitate. It also means that the bigger the distance and the bigger the transformation you can facilitate, you can position your program or process to help them expand that gap. Now, the extent to which, have you considered that the extent to which someone is prepared to share their hopes, dreams, and aspirations is directly proportionate to how much rapport you've built? That makes sense? Brene Brown says that vulnerability is telling your truth to someone who has deserved to hear it. Someone has earned the right to hear it. Okay. So when you're thinking about, you know, the stuff that you guys are selling, like, you know, most of you are selling investments that are in multiple thousands of pounds. Okay. It's not chump change, right? People are making a significant, potentially life-changing decision to work with you. Right. So Aileen, we had a chat earlier today. Like, your program, in terms of being able to help ambitious businesses accelerate, would you agree that if they work with you and their businesses accelerate, it would legitimately change their lives? Yeah. Cool. Nancy and Blair, I mean, if people use the tender coach process and they're able to increase their bid win rate, say that 10 times faster. They start getting more public sector bids, they start getting higher value contracts. Would that change people? Would that change someone's life?
It would change the business potential. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would change the owner's quality of life, the owner's wife's quality of life, or husband's quality of life, right? The staff, right? So it's just like, this is what we're doing here at this level. I mean, Pete, I can imagine people working with you as well. You know, startups being more extremely risky, right? So that owner has had to face down massive uncertainty in order to start the startup in the first place. And if you imagine, you know, them being able to be successful at it and mitigate that risk, what is the knock-on effect of all of that? Right. It's huge. It's huge. So the chit chat is the initial, but I mean, we're getting into gapping, but it's an important part of that, because you can, if you go into the whole sales process and NLP and all of these sort of things, you're looking at environmental cues, you're looking at how they're sitting, how they're talking. You know, if you really want to get into it in terms of eye movements, there's all sorts of personality profiling about how people organize their environment. And you can start to pick this stuff up. So the chit chat bit is, it seems like it's a little part, but it's starting to get people moving in that direction, starting to build that rapport. Okay. So which then allows us to move into the next stage, which is setting the frame. So this has all happened in the first 5 minutes of the call. Okay. So setting the frame, and I've realized I didn't do that in today's call about setting the frame. But it gives me an opportunity now to set the frame. Great reminder is to say that over the next 20 odd minutes, I'm going to be taking you guys on a journey into how to hopefully improve your closing rate. All right. And at the end of that, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to work with me if it feels appropriate. Is that okay? Is that okay with you guys? All right. You see what happened there? Everyone just said yes. Okay. So that's what setting the frame is as soon as you set the container that we're in and someone says, yes, I'm in, they've agreed to be part of the process. You started to create this entrainment, but also what it does is it puts you in a position of authority. Okay, you started pacing the pace of communication, right? Without having to say, you know, any of your credentials, just by saying this is what's going to happen, it puts you in control of the process. So, you know, things just like appreciating the timeline, establishing the goal and agenda, right? And you can start to do some very interesting things with language. So you notice how I said at the end of the time, I will give you the opportunity to work with me, right? I could have phrased that another way and said at the end of the purpose of this conversation is for you to decide to work with me. Right. Or I could say at the end of this, and this is completely your preference, but you could say the purpose of this conversation is I'm going to ask you a lot of questions and I want to see if you're a good fit for my program. Okay, notice the subtle difference. So if I say I'm going to make it, we're going to spend this time together and I'm going to make a decision about whether or not we're a good fit to work together. Okay, and that tees up the close, because at the end of it, you can then come back and say, during our time together, you've shared this information with me, and based on what you've shared with me, I think we're a great fit. Do you agree? And because you've gotten incremental yeses, there's an opportunity to say yes. Right. So setting the frame is where we start to transition into you taking control of the conversation, you pacing the flow of conversation, but also for the buying decision to be sitting with you, not with the prospect. Okay. Because my presupposition is that you guys know what you're doing. You're shit hot at what you do. Okay. Your process is the autocomplete, the magic wand for the right type of person. You can accelerate the achievement of their dreams if they're the right person and they commit. Right. And most of you guys are in a similar position where you can only work with a finite amount of people. Right. It might seem like, oh, sales is a big thing, I need lots of clients. But you know, most of you guys, if you're especially at the one-to-one stage, would max out at about 5 or 10. Right? After that, like more than that is wasteful. So it's more about having a position of being, how do I make sure I'm working with the 10 best people? Right. So having that frame of going, I can only work with 10 best people. I want to see if you're one of them. Okay. It starts to change the dynamic. So setting the frame, very, very important. It's probably like 1 or 2 sentences. Right. But you're taking control of the conversation. Right. Now we're setting the frame. Setting the frame. So, you know, I would say, you know, these are the top people I work with. These are people, this is what I believe in. And these are the type of people I want to work with. And I'd like to find out more about your hopes, dreams, and ambitions to see if it makes sense for us to work together for you to achieve your goals. Is that okay? Yes. Fantastic. Now we're getting into find the gap. All right. So I've agreed to all of this stuff. So now we're looking to find the gap. So we're looking at current reality and then desired reality. So current reality, if you find, I mean, if you ask people what they want, it's quite weird how psychology works. If you ask people what they want, it's a different part of the brain that activates compared to asking people if they like what they have. So the order of this is quite important. If you ask people what they want, you tend to get an answer that's not always based in data. It's not always measurable. But if you start with where you are now, it allows you to start grounding their expectations and start grounding the journey. Okay. In the back of your mind, you can also use your qualifying questions to start positioning the transformation based on the transformation you know that you can provide. For example, if I was with AMBID, I would be asking questions about current revenue. I'd be asking about the mix of public sector versus other types of businesses, how many tenders they're doing at present, and what are the people that are, what are the current closing rates, and what is the revenue from that. Because you kind of know what the transformation is that you can provide. So so in terms of where you are now, these are the three different points we're getting. Starting with where you are now, where would you like to be, what's in the way, and how would you like it to work? Right. So if we start with where are you now, the best salespeople don't have sales scripts. Right, so I'm just going to give you an examples of the kinds of questions that you could use at this time, but ultimately, I believe this should be in your own words, right? But the kinds of things are, when it comes to what are you trying to accomplish? What are your goals? Where are you trying to get to? What have you tried before that didn't work? What is your current monthly revenue? Just based on the people in the room, what is your current monthly revenue would be a good example. How many leads are you getting from the internet at the moment? How often do you have date night? All right, what's that like for you? What's your level of communication? So establishing a baseline. What's that like now? All right. What have you tried? What hasn't worked yet? What have you tried already? So establishing a baseline. Again, in the back of your mind, I'm hoping you've got an idea of the transformation you're trying to create, and you're wanting to personalize the transformation for the person that's in front of you. Okay, what's going on for you right now? Now, especially when you start to get you would have specific questions based on kind of what you're selling, right? So Massimo's questions would look quite different to Aileen's questions, which might look quite different to Jacqueline's questions, or Nancy's questions. But especially in terms of the money part, we want to get emotive content around like what's going on, but also things like what are your current financial, start talking about money very early on in the conversation, right? Because for whatever reason, this is one of the big transformations I had, was that I would talk all about the technology stuff, spend most of the time talking about technology, and then right at the end start talking about money, which means you had like 5 or 10 minutes to talk about money, and my price for whatever I was doing ended up being the first time money had been raised. Okay. And especially as I was back then quite honestly, I still am a little bit triggered about the money thing, but it's a much less so. I'd love to say I'm 100% comfortable with it, but I'm much more comfortable with it now than I was when I learned this stuff. Right? It's like start talking about
John, can I ask a question around that?
Of course.
Because this is something that you use the word triggers, but it's definitely something that I am uncomfortable with. And for me, I guess one of the reasons that I go, and you get this, and you get this, and I'm totally brilliant at this, and we can totally do all of this, and that's going to be amazing, and not mention the money, is to actually describe the value that you bring before you get to it.
Yeah.
So, and I got, what level of investment are you looking to make, etc. But other than that, I don't know if it's, how do you drop it in the conversation? What do you want to spend? I suppose you could just go for it.
It's a great question, right? So you've asked a question around the budget. Ultimately, what we want to get to is the conversation around how much they're going to work. How much money do you have to spend with me? All right. Right. So what we want to do is break this down so there's a couple of ways of doing it. I mean, you could use the closer to the beginning of the conversation, you can mention it. All right. I might mention, like, my program is around getting one-person businesses to 100K per year, £10,000 a month. Look there, I've mentioned it. All right. Okay, but now every time we refer back to that, and it's a ridiculous amount, £100,000 a month. Well, I might just say, oh, you know, I heard about this guy that's, you know, I'm working with this client, and he's launching a book, and he only works with businesses that earn 40 million a year and up. Okay. That's a number. I've mentioned it. So you could mention it in chit chat. You could mention it in setting the frame. But the best thing to do, I like, is to play the game of getting the other person to mention it first. Right? To say questions like, instead of saying what's your investment, be like, what's your current revenue? Okay. You know, what's your current revenue? You know, and what percentage of that are you currently spending on marketing? What else have you tried? How much, you know, and how much have you spent on that? How long have you been spending that amount of money? Right? So what we're building then is this construct in their own mind. You haven't mentioned anything yet, but what you've established is the anchor about which all future conversations, all future financial amounts will be referenced back to this anchor point that you're creating. I mean, for you guys, you know, for startups, it would be like, well, you know, what was your current revenue? What is your desired revenue? You know, I mean, some businesses I've worked with have spent tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds on digital marketing stuff and not gotten a result. Like, that's a great insight to extract early on in a conversation. So in terms of where you are right now, these are the kind of, you're starting to draw out these things early on. So Aileen, does that answer your question? Excellent. All right. And it's always awkward the first time, which is why I want to do it early on in the conversation. And then you can, you know, you have an opportunity to guide them through the process. And if they are going to freak out, then, you know, you've got an opportunity. You've got 40 minutes left of the call. Handle the objections.
Just to round that out and say that really helps, because, and then the other bit, and we've had a couple of conversations, is the how much do you want to do is another good one. Because then it's, because if you don't want to do anything, then let's be blunt, you're gonna have to pay for it. If you do want to do some, then that affects what the end number is going to be for people like myself anyway. Yeah. So
yeah. And it's also, it's interesting, you know, understanding about how your client thinks about money, how your client understands. I mean, honestly, I had one of the most radical revelations I ever had actually talking to Andrew from Embed, right? That I was going, you know, I had this program that was really cool, and I was like, it could get 100% return on your marketing investment. And he was like, but that's only £7,000 at a £3,000 product. And he was like, £7,000 is not exciting at all. Like, I can make that in an afternoon. All right. And then I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, idiot. So I stopped down and I said, okay, I'm going to put all this aside. What are you actually trying to achieve? And he told me what he was actually trying to achieve. And I was like, okay, this is something else entirely. So, you know, so it's not about like, it's, I have to keep on reminding myself that it's not about what you do. It's not about your service, because we tend to look at pricing our services based on like time and materials. We price up from how much it costs us. Whereas the invitation here, what I invite you, is to price back from the value of the desired outcome. Okay, where are you trying to get to? And for us in the kind of service business, a rough estimate is 20% of the value of the desired outcome, adjusted by appetite for risk and how much of the work you're doing versus how much of the risk you're absorbing. Might be slightly higher if you're absorbing more risk, or slightly lower if they're taking the risk. But revenue is derived from risk. Like how much, you know, how likely is it that you're going to get to this desired outcome working with me? Interesting. So when you're saying where you now, we're looking at current reality, you know, where you now, what's going on in your world relative to your the thing that you're doing. Okay. Massimo's going to ask quite different baseline questions than, for example, Aileen or Pete or Nancy, right? But where are you now? And we're starting to, people love to talk about themselves, but you're getting all of this data. Where are you now? What's going on for you at the moment? Probably 5 to 10 minutes on this, depending. But if they love to talk, just let them talk. And you're taking note of the stuff. You're seeing what's important, right? And then we're going to look at where do you want to be? Okay. Now, my favorite way of asking this question is to say the magic wand question, right? Is to say, let's imagine it's 12 months from now and think of a specific time. Like, what's the date now? Like at the moment, you know, I like the 16th at the moment, like the 16th of December is a good one because it's just before Christmas. This is a great place to transport people to and say it's the, you know, it's the last Friday of the year, right? You know, and we're on the phone. We've had a call. We're just having a call and we're wrapping up. Okay, what are we celebrating? Okay, it's 6 months in the future. We're celebrating. Like, what does the world look for you at the moment? Like, if I could wave my magic wand and everything worked out brilliantly for you, all of your wildest dreams come true, what does that look like for you? What would it mean to you if you had that? You know, how would things be different if you had this thing? And let them, their words, their objectives. I was on a call with a prospective coaching client and for one of my group programs, and wild success for him was that he'd be able to fly his girlfriend over to come and visit. He'd have his, he's a dude in Argentina. I mean, I don't know the culture there. I'd never met the guy before. All right. But that was his thing. He was like, cool, like this would mean if I could get out of my digs, I'd have my own place and I could fly my girlfriend over for Christmas. And he lit up like a Christmas tree. And I'm like, right, let's talk about how we get there. Okay. You see how that's different compared to, I'm not talking about product or service, but it's like we're starting to establish that context. Okay. Now, turned out he couldn't afford the investment, right? But he's busting his gut getting the money together because that's what he wants. It's got nothing to do with, the value of my services or my software or all of this stuff, but that's what it's the vision that he wants. Okay. And I'm just a facilitator to say, cool, like how to get there. I'm like, I appreciate you don't have the money for this right now, but let's talk again in 30 days. And in the meantime, this is what I want you to do. These are the moves I want you to make so that you can get there. And he's self-motivated because it's not about me, it's about him. Okay. One of my other clients, a guy called John Hitler, he's a absolute world-class business coach. He's the guy who only works with 40 million plus businesses. He talks about, the way he asks that question is, he says, have you guys heard of a restaurant called the French Laundry? It's like one of the most expensive restaurants on earth. It's in America somewhere. But he says, like, let's imagine we're going to the French Laundry. It's one of the best. It's like $3,000 a bottle of wine and like that kind of thing. It's ridiculous. Like, you don't go there to celebrate, things being okay. You just go there to celebrate wild success. And he says, imagine we're sitting there. The main course has just arrived. We've ordered this bottle of wine or whatever. What are we celebrating? Okay. And we work backwards from there. Because if that image is clear in the person's mind, that's the plan, that's the mission, that's the outcome. Now we can start to position against that. What would it mean if you had that? What are the things that would be different if you had that? Now we can talk about how to get there, right? What would accelerate or ensure that you have the results? Now we can start to look at what's in the way. Okay, why has this not happened yet? Okay, like if this is what you want, why isn't it happened yet? What's holding you back? And now they're going to start to say, I don't have a strategy. I feel like I can't do this by myself. I don't have enough time. I've got, these infrastructure issues are in the way, or I don't understand how the funding process works, or giving you guys all kinds of straight examples. Like bids, you know, the tender process seems very complicated to me, or I don't know how to talk to my wife without starting a fight. Like really going off center here. But you see, they'll start to give you the examples. Like, I don't even know how to start a conversation about this. Might be something like someone might say to Massimo, right? So now they're telling you what's in the way, and you see how you're starting to get the context. If you're going to talk about your product, you start to see now how to talk about it. About, okay, great, you want to get here, this is what's in the way. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can put in place to make sure that we get there. Okay. Cool. So once you've got all that stuff, the next piece then is empathize and reflect. Right? We're still, you might have noticed at this point, I'm not really adding much content. I still haven't really spoken much about my process. I might have spoken about my clients, but it's all about them. It's all about their world and about getting to the motivations. All right. So what that looks like is, so what I'm hearing you share is X, Y, Z. If I understand what you really want is X, so that you can get Y without running into Z. You know, you can move to Cabo and live on the beach without having to work 40 hours a day, 20 hours a day. Right? You want to move to Cabo so you can surf on the beach every day. You want to move to Spain. You want to reflect that and let them go, yeah, absolutely. If you're getting, or they might say more, but that's the click point that you're looking at. And honestly, if you get that right and they start saying yes, most of the sales actually done at that point. You know, if you've done this right and you know what you're doing, you can position it, the rest of the sale almost takes care of itself. Because they're like, yes, cool, you're the guy that can help me get there. Cool. And this is what I play, like repeat that process. What I hear is until I call it the click. I don't know how else to explain this, but at some point, like the person is almost like the tension seems to drain out of their body. And they're like, yes, this guy understands me. Right? And there's a trust. I don't know, it's a subtle shift in the energy. That person now goes, yes, okay, cool. You understand me. And at that point, you know, it's time to start prescribing and to say, you know, based on where we are, now you can spend maybe 5 to 10 minutes talking about what you do, but it's in the context of how to get that person to get what they want based on where they are without encountering their perceived obstacles. Okay, so if you imagine my diagram, like my 9-step thing, there's lots of stuff in there. I could talk for hours about it, but I would highlight that from the process to say, these are the key things that, you know, these are the key things we need to put in place in order to help you get there. Okay. Now, if you don't yet have a process, what you will do is make it up. Okay, because then you say, listen, what we're going to do is I'm going to put together a custom process for you. It's one-to-one, and what we're going to do is X, Y, Z. If you're doing one-to-one, you don't have to have a program. Burn it all to dust. You can just, you know, common sense. I mean, you can ask additional clarifying questions like, what would support look like? How often do you want to see me? Do you want to work remotely or one-to-one? Like, what's going to be the best way for you to get to where you want to be? And often, you know, the best programs are developed by your customer in their own words. They'll tell you what they want. And then you can even ask, like, based on what you've told me, do you feel like this is a good way? You know, you can prescribe, situate your solution in the gap, right? So what you showed to me is this, and I've put together, you know, put it all together, and we're looking again for that confirmation. You know, what you've shared to me is this, and if we put these things together, you know, are we going to get to where they want to be? So you're positioning your program so that it fits perfectly into what they've shared. If you have a program, you'll say my program is called, and it's a step-by-step framework for, you know, startup consultants who are not earning what they're worth to earn what to have a queue of clients that they need to, that they turn away without having to work 40 hours a day. Right? Or help, you know, my program is called the Conscious Business Accelerator, and it's help relationships consultants, become world famous and live the life of their dreams and be able to enable couples to reimagine, to reconnect to a new level. If I have a program, maybe I would create it with that. If I don't have a program, I would make it up. Okay, because if you're one-to-one, you can make it up, or you could just simply praise, like, okay, I'm going to work one-to-one with you in order to put this process together. Okay, it's designed to help people who want the things that you want, to have these things in the way they experience the things that they want without having to go through the things in a certain way. So you put that together. My program is to help people like you who are here, who want to get there without having these things, without having to encounter these things. And we're going to work together to do this. Cool. And then 8, decision, close to cash. Now, if we've done those previous bits right, this should almost be the easiest point. I say easy, simple, but not easy, because there's a booby trap here. It says, based on what you shared with me, I think you'd be a perfect fit for my program. Do you agree? And then zip it, say nothing, quiet. Yeah, because that's what we tend to do, is we then keep talking. It's like, no, you've said what you want to say, quiet. Let them process, let them talk. Let them process. If there are any legitimate things, but at that point, often they'll just talk themselves into yes. Just keep quiet, let them talk. If there's any remaining concerns or things like that, let that then come out. Can potentially address that. But ultimately, if you've done the first bits, that should be most of the way there. After that sentence, be quiet, listen. And what they say next, validate your offer. Man, Pete, this sounds perfect. Jacqueline, this, these quiz funnels you recommended, they absolutely sound like they're going to get me where I want to go. Never heard of quiz funnels before, but I can see how that's going to help me 4x my revenue and buy a yacht. Okay, or whatever it is that we wanted. Okay. Yeah. Right. So the next steps then, if it's a yes, is fantastic. The next step is, and then do the next step immediately. Right. The next step is, we're going to pay initial holding deposit. It's $5,000. Do you want to do a bank transfer or a card payment? Now, presuppose that you've got all of this stuff. Like, it sounds obvious that it's easy, make it easy for people to give you money. Right. Assuming you've got all bank accounts and all the payment processes, if you're taking money internationally, make sure you have all of that stuff handled. Because that process right now is the peak. This person is the most dialed in, clear, concise that they're going to be about making a decision to change their lives. And that's what it should mean, working with you. If the next step is a next meeting, book the meeting in the moment. But I mean, for depending on how your business works, there might be 5, 10 to 40% of people prepared to press go at the moment. So just if cash is an option, the way I work is to always I don't. My personal preference is I don't necessarily do contracts, but I always ask for money up front. Okay, like that's how I know I've got it right. Just simplifies the process. You say, cool, you want to get started, the first step of the process is a payment of some kind. Obviously, you can structure it, or you can move it around, but I like to do some kind of payment up front, because then the person is committed. And what I love about this game, especially in the professional services space, is that, like, my program costs £3,000. No, my program costs £6,000. You see what I just did there? I just doubled the price of the program. Yeah, no atoms are involved. Nothing needed to be moved. It's all about perception. It's all about value, right? Because the perception has got nothing to do with the constituents, like the building blocks, and about the cost, but it's about the value is perceived in the eye of the prospective client. Okay, like at some point you might decide to work with me. I promise you it's not going to be because of how much you like me. Might be a contributing factor, but I invite you to consider it's going to be about what about the way I operate is going to help you get what you want? Okay. Cool. So those are the next steps. Cash, if you can take money immediately, do it. Not everyone's going to do it, and it's about a percentage game. It doesn't mean you've lost the game if you don't get money up front, but consider that as an option, right? That if people want to give you money, be able to take it and just go. Some people, especially doing B2B process, there might be multiple moving parts, but whatever the next decisions and proposals and that sort of thing. But whatever the next step is, take the next step, do it now while they're on the call, while they're engaged. If you can set your business up in such a way that you're able to send invoices or those sort of things immediately, those couple of minutes really are magical from that point of view. Maybe even schedule a couple of minutes after a sales meeting to make sure that you've got time for those follow-ups. Review the process, have time for follow-ups, make sure that you've done whatever the things are that you said you were going to do in order to keep things moving forward. And then, for bonus points, you can engineer your sales process in such a way that there's some kind of a fireworks experience after they send their first money. So that, and I love this is why, part of my process, you see what I did there, includes software that you can automate a lot of this process so that when somebody signs up, you can immediately kick off a whole bunch of deliverables. Okay. Like if you sign up to my program, what will happen is you immediately get access to the digital training program. You immediately get access to the invitations to the weekly masterminds, the weekly training sessions, right? You immediately get access to a whole bunch of cool stuff. So at the moment someone presses go, they have the opportunity, they start getting cool stuff, even though you haven't necessarily done something. Right? You can engineer it in such a way that as soon as they press money, that they've given you money, stuff's happening in their world. Maybe, it's manually sending them emails, send them a proposal, send them a something. So that the moment they press go, cool stuff starts happening. Amazing. Cool. That's what I wanted to get through today. What I haven't done is manage in a sales process. What you should do is allow at least 5 to 10 minutes at the end to deal with questions and objections, which in my enthusiasm to deliver lots of content, I haven't allowed many questions for much time for questions, but I will stick around for a couple of minutes if you guys have any questions. Everyone's all, you can see you guys all excited, all disappointed that I didn't give you the pitch at the end.
See the pitch.
Well, I see. I would mix it up based on who's in the room. But Jacqueline and Massimo are already in my group coaching program. But I would say if any of this is interesting to you and you want to go and you want to sprint from where you are now to 100K to £10,000 a month and go through the process of rapidly going from one-to-one to group coaching to digital program in a group of fun people in a way that you get sessions like this every week and a mastermind every week and a whole bunch of cool extra training. 100K business, the investment is £200 a month. Yeah, there's no contracts. You can move, you can leave anytime you like. But because I don't want people that are not interested in, if you're not having a good time, I don't want you to be stuck in a program that you're not interested in. But the group program is £200 a month. Does that sound like a good deal?
I like what you did there.